I think things look pretty bleak for Humza Yousaf at the present moment.
And the position of the Greens is crucial in this vote of no confidence. What can you tell us, Kieran?
Well, the Scottish Greens have, just as we're speaking now, released a press release confirming that they will vote no confidence in Humza Yousaf when this vote comes to Parliament. We're expecting that vote to come next Wednesday, probably. That leaves the vote on an absolute knife edge. It means that the Conservatives, Labour, the Greens and the Liberal Democrats will all vote no confidence in Humza Yousaf, and it effectively leaves the casting vote with somebody who resigned as an SNP minister a couple of years ago, somebody who crossed the floor to join Alex Salmond's Alba party, Ash Regan, the former SNP Community Safety Minister. The Greens deciding to vote against the government is a big blow for Humza Yousaf.
Right.
Effectively, their line is the Butte House Agreement was a confidence deal, and Humza Yousaf ended that, so they no longer have confidence in the First Minister.
Right, so the situation in Scotland couldn't be more precariously balanced as we speak. I want to just look at the crucial numbers on all of this. When you say it's in the balance, Kieran, what do you mean by that? Is it about one single vote, that of Ash Regan? She will decide whether the First Minister survives or not. And let's just look at the possibility that he does not. What does that mean? Does that mean the resignation of the First Minister? Does it mean a general election?
So, yes, in short to the Ash Regan question, the numbers in the Parliament mean that the combined other opposition parties have 64 votes. The SNP have 63 MSPs. That means if Ash Regan votes with the SNP, the vote will be tied, and Holyrood's presiding officer, the equivalent of the Speaker, by convention will vote with the status quo, so Humza Yousaf will be safe. But if Ash Regan votes with the other opposition parties, Humza Yousaf will lose that vote of no confidence. So here we have an incredible situation where an MSP for a party founded by Alex Salmond, who so bitterly fell out with the SNP a few years ago, now holds Humza Yousaf, the SNP's First Minister's future, in her hands. In terms of the outcome of the vote, it's not a binding vote. Humza Yousaf would not be forced from office if he loses the vote, but the political pressure would be huge. And if he was to depart, then Holyrood would have 28 days to find a new First Minister who'd be voted in by MSPs, commanding the confidence of the Parliament. If that didn't happen, then Parliament would dissolve and would be on for a snap Scottish election.
Okay, so if Humza Yousaf loses, they've got to find another First Minister, and if that, in a vote, loses another vote of confidence, then it's general election time. Really good to talk to you, Kieran. Let's now talk to Alex Salmond, the leader of the Alba party, which is, of course, Ash Regan's party now, since she left the SNP. Ash, of course, holds the fate of the government in her hands. And now let's talk to her leader. Welcome to you, Alec.
Good to be here, John.
Always good to talk to you, Alec. Now, first of all, what are your thoughts? What do you make of the news so far, then? This decision of the Greens to bail out on the SNP and then back a vote of no confidence in Humza Yousaf?
Well, I mean, I think Humza Yousaf has developed a kamikaze instinct. He's decided to declare he's moving into minority government, and he spent most of the day insulting every opposition party in the Parliament, which, when you don't have the votes to protect your own First Ministership, seems a very poor strategy indeed. So I think things look pretty bleak for Humza Yousaf at the present moment.
Right, so if we cut to the chase, sometime middle of next week, there's going to be this vote of no confidence in Humza Yousaf, and it seems that your now colleague, Ash Regan, formerly SNP, now the only Alba party member in the Scottish Parliament, she could decide the outcome. Can you tell me now what she's going to do?
Well, we couldn't be in better hands, because Ash Regan is not just one of the grown-ups in the Scottish Parliament. She's an adult human female. She's an adult in terms of her attitude to politics. It means that she'll do what's in the best interests of Scotland. And she's a human female, which is a designation that Humza Yousaf has found it very difficult to recognise. So when Ash Regan says she'll write to the First Minister and she'll lay out her interests and priorities on the pursuit of independence,
yes,
which is meant to be the aim of the Scottish National Party, the protection of women and girls in legislation, which the SNP have so lamentably failed to do in recent years, and thirdly, to reintroduce some form of competence into the SNP administration, then if I were Humza Yousaf, I'd better get drafting a very favourable answer. Otherwise, he's going to be known, I suppose, as Humza the Brief.
Okay.
Because he'll have had 1 year tenure as First Minister, and that'll be that.
You were always a man for an epigram, Alec Humza the Brief. Does that then mean, though, that Ash Regan has a license in this? You're her party leader, but you're not guiding her, you're not ordering her to do anything in particular. You're leaving it to her to lay down terms for her vote in this no confidence vote, and then to decide herself whether she backs the government, depending on the answer. Is that right?
Well, Ash Regan recognised very early this morning this was the likely outcome as soon as she saw the terms of Humza Yousaf's press conference this morning and the agitated reaction of the Greens, who seems to have fallen out with in spectacular style. So at that stage, she explained to me what her tactics were going to be in the interest of the country. And I think she's absolutely correct. I think she should lay out the terms and see how the First Minister responds. And in that reply will be the fate of Humza as First Minister. If he persuades Ash Regan that he's going to make progress on independence, he's going to alter the lunatic policies of culture wars and self-identification and the nonsense of which he's got embroiled in over the last year, and his plans for getting the Scottish government back onto a competent agenda. I mean, the Scottish Parliament was famed in the not too distant past for being the most competent government in these islands. And now, of course, he's losing two incompetent ministers in Patrick Harvie and Lorna Slater. But there's more than just get rid of the Greens. You have to spell out why their performance is going to improve on the things that matter to people, which are jobs, education, housing and health, the very things that the SNP administration have taken their eye completely off the ball in recent years. So a lot's going to depend on Humza Yousaf's letter. And I think his special advisors better get drafting as soon as they see the terms of Ash Regan's letter to him.
Right, it's a pretty comprehensive list of demands you're about to, or that Ash Regan, your colleague, is about to hand to Humza Yousaf. You talk about, well, all sorts of aspects of domestic policy, but at the heart of it, for our listeners who don't follow this very clearly, there's a very specific demand, isn't there? You want action to be promised in the Scottish Parliament to pave the way to a new independence referendum.
Well, that's correct. We want progress towards independence. I mean, in Alapa, we're of a mind that we're not going to get a referendum conceded by Westminster because of the weakness and ineptitude of the SNP government in recent years. That wasn't all Humza Yousaf's fault. He inherited a bleak timetable from Nicola Sturgeon. But we'll have to look for a mandate in an election, either a general election or a Scottish election. But to get a mandate, you've got to appeal for one. You can't just say, oh, we're quite in favour of independence and we'll ask Sir Keir Starmer if he'll give us a referendum. That's not going to wash. So Ash Regan has proposed both that each and every election should be treated as a mandate for independence. But secondly, she's proposed legislation within the competence of the Scottish Parliament to ask the people of Scotland to endorse the idea that the issue of independence should be decided in Scotland in their own Parliament. Up till now, Humza Yousaf has been extraordinarily dismissive of this idea. I don't think he's even thought about it very much. Well, he better change his tune over the next few days.
Right. So the SNP so far, they have not yielded to that demand of yours and your colleague Ash Regan for a preparatory referendum on the way to an independence referendum, and you insist that he give way on all of that. But it's got to be said, in terms of the tactics of this, Alec, and you knew your way around the book of tactics, as of now, you got Humza Yousaf right over a barrel. You got his fate in your hands, in your colleague's hand. Isn't it a good idea from your point of view, I wonder, to keep him there, maybe to back him in this coming vote, and then just lay down your demands in the future as and when they come along?
Well, I mean, you'll see the terms of Ash Regan's letter, which she'll publish. It'll all be above board, and then we'll see the terms of Humza Yousaf's reply. That couldn't be fairer than that. But, John, shouldn't really be asking a great deal to make a demand of the Scottish National Party that they return to having independence for Scotland as their top priority. That shouldn't be an unbridgeable gap or an unreasonable demand.
Yes.
And get back to the pursuit of self-determination for Scotland, as opposed to self-identification in the highways and byways of culture politics that they've been distracted by for the last few years. So, it's not an unreasonable demand from Alapa.
But Alec, what about my
independence as our main priority?
But what about my point? Would you contemplate keeping or allowing Humza Yousaf to stay where he is, knowing you got power over him in the future?
Well, luckily we've got someone who's in this powerful position that you describe in Ash Regan, who is an adult human female who will be acting in the best interests of the Scottish people, and that will be uppermost in her mind.
Okay, last question, Alex. Forgive me, Alex.
It's a heavy burden of responsibility, certainly, but we have a politician of the poise and confidence and the principle who will be able to discharge that responsibility.
Okay, if I can very briefly, and again, grateful to you for coming on. If you were to play your part, or your colleague were to play her part in bringing down Humza Yousaf and even bringing down the Scottish SNP government, wouldn't that seriously set back the cause you love, the cause of Scottish independence? Because the SNP have lost a lot of ground. Labour are on the up, not the SNP. In a word, if you could, Alex.
Well, a sentence then, John. Remember, Humza Yousaf coming down does not seal the fate of an SNP government. They'll then have 28 days for someone else to form an administration. And who knows, within the ranks of the MSPs in the Scottish National Party, there might be someone who can command the confidence of the Parliament if Humza Yousaf fails to do so.
All right, that's a clear answer, as clear as it gets to this point. Alec Salmond, thank you so much for joining us. I want to go now straight to Fergus Ewing, who's been an MSP for the Scottish National Party for the whole existence of that Scottish Parliament these last 25 years. Welcome to you, Fergus.
Good afternoon, John.
Fergus, now you were listening, now, I'm sure, to Alec Salmond. Your party, the SNP, is in a terrible pickle. There'll be a vote of confidence, of no confidence in the leader, Humza Yousaf. Ash Regan, your former colleague, who's now the sole member of Alec Salmond's party, the Alaba party, got the whole thing in her hands on the numbers. And if Humza Yousaf does not promise a big change of direction in lots of areas, including legislation to move closer to independence, it could be curtains for him. What a mess, Fergus. What do you think?
Well, it's a happy day for me, John, in one sense, that the wretched Butte House deal is now in the bin, along with many of its duff-dud policies that really caused damage to the cause of independence, to my party, because the Green Party basically want to destroy half the economy. They openly hate and despise people that work in our world-class oil and gas industry, fishing, farming. They tell farmers how to farm, but not to produce food. Chemical industry, that's for the heave. Productive forestry is no use. I mean, the list is almost endless. We've been in bed with a bunch of self-avowed extremists, and the record on detailed policies, John, is what made me an unlikely apprentice rebel at the age of 66. I've been at it for a couple of years now, so I might be indentured quite soon. But you're right, the party is in a mess. But although Humza disciplined me and suspended me, I'm not suggesting that because he did what I did and disapproved and voted against and voted out two Green ministers, he should be disciplined, although there's an argument for that and quite a lot of people are saying that. I think I'll just turn the other cheek and suggest instead that he conducts a spring clean of policies, and also that he works with the other major parties. Alex Salmond is absolutely right. The purpose of the existence of the SNP is independence. But in my view, in order to get there, we need to win and retain the trust and confidence of the people of Scotland. Under Alec's leadership, we went a long way to doing that because Alec focused on jobs, the economy, the health service and education. Under Humza, we're focusing on gender reform, conversion therapy, fantasy policies on heat pumps, a dreadful policy that's coming along, which would create higher mortgage interest rates in Scotland. I mean, the list is endless, so the future looks difficult, but I think if Humza were to consume a slice or two of humble pie over the next couple of days, John, then and indicate that he will meet the leaders of the other parties, all of them, and work seriously with them, then he should be able to defuse this vote of no confidence. I will support him. I will give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, it's not clear. Fergus, it's not clear to me how he defuses this situation? I mean, clearly you were no fan of this coalition deal with the Green, that we know, but there was a deal and now it's collapsed. His fate is in the hands with, on one side, the Green colleagues whose policies you so dislike, and on the other, you've got Ash Regan, who says let's have a big step towards independence with new legislation in the Holyrood Parliament, who didn't like a lot of the things that the Greens were doing. Can't please all of them. No chance. Is his game over? Is it all up now for Humza Yousaf, surely?
Well, there's two scenarios. Either Ash Regan, this is the way it looks at the moment, John. Things can change between now and the vote next week, I imagine. But the scenario one is that Ash Regan votes with Humza and supports him, in which case he survives. If she doesn't, then there's 28 days to find a new leader.
Yes.
And the party would then have to find somebody. I very much hope that Kate Forbes, who very nearly beat Humza, despite no support from the leadership, despite being attacked by Nicola Sturgeon for her Christian views, which I found quite staggering, actually, and repellent. And I think Kate Forbes has commanded an awful lot of respect for the way she's carried herself since then, acting with great dignity. And also, she has the kind of ability to reach across the political divide, John. And after all, I mean, if we are to get to independence, we need to make people like us, trust us, believe in us, believe that we work hard for them to get things done, things that they want, not things that they regard as either private personal matters of morality or matters where government really shouldn't be telling parents how to bring up their children, how to look after them in that smug, superior way that the Greens did, where anyone who disagreed with them was a leper, an outcast. So, I think in either scenario, there is a way ahead for the SNP. I'm prepared to turn the other cheek to give Humza a chance, but please, Humza, show a little humility. People would see that as refreshing. And if you reach out to the other party leadership and say, I want to work seriously with you, have serious discussions, then I believe that he should give himself a chance to survive.
Okay. You hope that Humza Yousaf can somehow stagger on, maybe muddle on, some would say. It looks like a very difficult job. But Fergus Ewing, good to have you with us. Thank you for your thoughts. Jim, Craig, let me come to you first. So there it is. The coalition's gone. The Greens, former partners, are voting against Humza Yousaf on the basis of the motion you put down. You Conservatives in Scotland have wanted this vote of no confidence. Are you rubbing your hands today, Craig, at this political victory?
I don't think we're rubbing our hands. I think we're just recognising the political reality on the ground in Scotland today. This has been an utterly humiliating day for the First Minister, Humza Yousaf. He staked his leadership bid on being the continuity candidate, maintaining the coalition with the Greens, something that he said was worth its weight in gold. He was defending the coalition deal with the Greens right up until earlier this week, and to save his own skin, he's decided now to sever links with the Green Party. But it's quite clear now that he is both weak, distracted and unfit to be Scotland's First Minister. That's not just my conclusion. I think now that we've tabled this motion of no confidence, we're supported by Labour, the Liberal Democrats and now the Greens, who were in government with Humza Yousaf until just this morning. So,
Craig, do you think Humza Yousaf can survive? Do you think the administration can survive now?
Well, our motion is a motion of no confidence in Humza Yousaf as First Minister. I hope he is defeated. I hope he is removed. He has done real damage to Scotland. He is trying to take Scotland back to the constitutional division of the past. Under his leadership, there has been policy U-turn after policy U-turn, scandal after scandal, and he has tied himself to some of the extremist policies of the Greens, a deposit return scheme that was going to do real damage to Scotland's economy, the gender recognition reforms, which were rightly, obviously, struck down by the UK government and the courts. And also the Greens have been a roadblock, literally a roadblock on some of the major infrastructure investment we need in Scotland's roads. I'm pleased to see them leaving government, but I'd also like to see Humza Yousaf cease to be Scotland's First Minister because of the damage he's done to Scotland over the last 12 months.
All right, let me come to you, Jim. Do you think that Humza Yousaf can in any way survive this? Do you think the administration can survive this? Or are we heading now for a general election, Jim?
I think those are three separate questions, but the quick answer would be it's difficult to see how Humza Yousaf survives. It's possible his government does because the Conservatives have tabled a motion no confidence in the leader of the party rather than the party. And the Conservatives and the SNP don't want an election in Scotland. And both parties are really at the bottom of the levels of support in Scotland, and neither of them would relish the chance of facing the electorate. I actually feel quite sorry for Humza Yousaf, and perhaps that's not the fashionable thing to say. I mean, sorry for him for two reasons. One, many of the problems that he is dealing with, he's inherited from his predecessor. The SNP are split from top to bottom, left to right, fundamentalists and moderates, and it's a party that's unwilling to be led or governed.
Yeah.
And the second thing is being attacked by the Scottish Green Party is like being savaged by a house-trained pony. I mean, they're a ridiculous party that's an embarrassment to the concept of a Green Party. We have a serious Green Party in other parts of the UK, across Europe, but in Scotland, the Green Party are nothing more than a pale imitation of some sort of leftist nationalist party.
But Jim, I mean, Jim, are these not crocodile tears? Because this will do the SNP surely no good at all. And when the SNP sink further in the polls, it means it's generally good news for your party, the Labour Party, isn't it?
Well, the big winner today is actually the Labour Party. The Labour Party in Scotland. If there were to be a Scottish Parliament election, then Labour would probably be the largest party. And then at a UK level, this continued demise of the SNP from all the optimism and promise and energy and momentum of 2014. The fact is, Labour is the only party in Scotland with momentum at the moment. I'm not being complacent about that. But for listeners in other parts of the UK, why is that important? At a UK context, for every 8 seats that Labour can win in a UK general election in Scotland, it means a 1% less swing is necessary for Keir Starmer to get the keys.
Which is why I say this is good news for the Labour Party.
Keir Starmer had a route to power into Downing Street without Scotland, but the route to a really substantial majority now runs through central Scotland.
Which is why they must be quietly celebrating in London at the Labour Party right now. Craig, I know you have to rush off to another meeting, but let me ask you this. What do you make of what Jim Murphy said there, which is ultimately you don't want a Scottish parliamentary election because it may not do you a great deal of good. Now, given you're committed to voting against Humza Yousaf on that vote of confidence, how do you then deal with that? Do you then support another potential First Minister from the Scottish National Party coming along to avoid an election for Holyrood?
Well, I don't think that's the position as set out by Jim. He was talking about the general election there as if that the Scottish Conservatives don't feature in seats right across Scotland, from the northeast to the southwest.
No, I think Jim was saying that they may want to get rid of Humza Yousaf.
My point, John, is that there's a majority in the Scottish Parliament who don't want a Scottish election.
Yes.
And that majority...
So let me put that, bear with me, Jim, let me put that to Craig Hoy now. What do you say Craig, to that?
Our primary objective today is to get rid of Humza Yousaf because of the damage that he has done to Scotland, and I think there's a general consensus upon that. If a general election in Scotland is what is required to do that, then so be it. But I think to oversimplify Scottish politics, as Jim is doing, is wrong. And seats are right across Scotland, as I say, in Aberdeenshire in the north east, right down to the southwest. There are many seats where it is a straight choice between the Scottish Conservatives and the SNP.
Would you vote to bring down the government and precipitate a general election in Scotland?
Well, our principal motive, Jim, as I said, is to stop the damage that is being done.
Well, that's a no. So that's a no then. You don't want a general election.
Hold on, bear with us, Jim. Let's give Craig. We're going to give. Forgive me, Craig. We're going to give you a chance to answer that. I'm going to make the question perfectly clear. Are we at a position now where you say you will seek to vote out Humza Yousaf, but you may not seek to force out any potential successor because, well, as Jim would argue, you don't want a Scottish general election?
Well, we want to get rid of Humza Yousaf. That's the principal objective here and now. We can't really foretell where we might be towards the middle of next week or towards the middle of next month.
So you might support another candidate. You might support another candidate for First Minister.
Well, it would be to whether or not that candidate can have majority support amongst their own party and perhaps amongst the Greens, or don't forget, the Kingmaker or the Queenmaker in all of this could be Ash Regan. She may have the casting vote, the sole Alba candidate, the sole Alba MSP at Holyrood. And isn't it, there's something quite interesting in the fact that it could be Alex Salmond's party that may end up determining whether or not the SNP continues in government with a new First Minister.
Okay, well, you are leaving your options open on the possibility of what happens after after if Humza Yousaf is voted down. I know you have to leave us, Craig. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks very much indeed, John. Cheers.
Jim, if you're still with us,
Yeah.
I mean, it is a fact, though, isn't it, that the Labour Party in Scotland have supported the SNP on a lot of contentious issues, such as gender identity, which upset a fair number of voters, and on the climate targets, which led to trouble.
But the fact is that where the Labour Party has agreed with the SNP, I think it does make sense to vote with them. You can't really have a politics that you disagree about the things that you agree on. So that does make sense. Where the problem in this isn't really about today, and I completely appreciate that many of your listeners and viewers don't follow the twists and turns of Scottish politics. But there's been a schism growing in the SNP between those who want relative radicalism on the left and those who want pretty conservatism on the right, who want to go further on climate change and other issues.
Yeah.
And that's really what's at play here. And what has happened is Humza Yousaf, as First Minister, was losing control of his party on the right and losing control of the Parliament to the left in the coalition.
Yeah. Well, we are where we are, Jim.
Today he's chosen his party over the Parliament.